Thank you all for joining. I'm excited to talk to you today about 1 Minute Reader Live, an excellent summer solution. We'll start with a brief overview of what we'll cover today. Of course, we'll very briefly cover Read It Live and the Read Naturally strategy. But the majority of our time is going to be an overview of 1 Minute Reader Live, the levels that are available, a comparison between 1 Minute Reader Live and Read Naturally Live. I'm going to provide a demonstration for you, which will include both the staff module as well as the student module. And then we have some resources and Q&A at the end. So as many of you probably know, Read Live is a suite of reading programs. It includes Read Naturally Live, our primary flagship program, Word Warm-Ups Live, which is a phonics and decoding program, 1 Minute Reader Live, what we're talking about today, which is an independent reading program, and then Read Naturally Live Espanol. These 4 programs are available to any student with a Read Live license, and there's some differences between each one. Read Naturally Live goes from 1st through 8th grade reading level, and the focuses are on vocabulary, comprehension, phonics, and fluency. A teacher is required to be with the students for at least 1, ideally 2 of the steps. Word Warm-Ups Live is a phonics program where they get a lot of decoding practice. It starts in 1 syllable, then 2 syllable, and then a multisyllabic level. Many of the steps are independent, but a teacher is required, so it is often used as an intervention. 1 Minute Reader Live is the only program within this suite of programs that is totally independent. And it goes from 1st through mid-5th grade reading level. And students do work independent. The primary focuses are comprehension and fluency within 1 Minute Reader Live. And then we have a Spanish version of Read Naturally Live only. But Read Naturally Live in Spanish goes from 1st through mid-5th grade reading level. And that is identical to Read Naturally Live. It's just for trying to teach kids to read in Spanish. So let's talk about 1 Minute Reader Live. We all know about why we need such a thing for our students. More than 1 in 3 students, from our kindergartners through our 3rd grade students, need intensive reading intervention. I've heard from countless educators throughout the country, and I'm sure you know this to be true as well. We have more struggling readers now than we maybe ever have, at least in my memory. We also have a teacher shortage in many of our schools and districts. And it's a bad combination. But 1 Minute Reader Live is a great solution for that. We know that in some high poverty schools, as many as 60% of the students have been identified as being at risk with reading problems. And students who are not proficient readers by 3rd grade are 4 times less likely to graduate high school. So we know all about the problem. That's why you're logged in today, to learn about it. And it really says a lot about you that you're here. So I appreciate you being here. 1 Minute Reader Live is a research-based program. It's based on the same strategy as Read Naturally. It's structured, it's independent. It's for developing readers of all ages, and it does not require any involvement from the teacher. It has the highly effective instruction using that Read Naturally strategy, and students are able to improve their fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension while working in 1 Minute Reader. As with all of the 4 programs in Read Live, 1 Minute Reader Live uses teacher modeling, repeated reading, and progress monitoring. So students read along with audio support. So even though a teacher is not there to identify their errors, they will hear the words read correctly. They do some repeated reading, right, which is mastery learning. So students read the same passage many times, and they like to because they see their score get higher. And all that progress monitoring is right in front of the kid to motivate him. It benefits, as I mentioned, students of all ages, because for one, as those of you who have used Read Naturally, many of you for years, know how interesting our passages are. So that's one great thing. 1 Minute Reader has the same nonfiction high interest stories. It's challenging material for both young and advanced readers. So sometimes students use 1 Minute Reader Live who are advanced and want to work up a grade level or 2. That's absolutely acceptable with this program. Students who are using Read Naturally Live as an intervention within the school can use 1 Minute Reader Live at home for homework. They can use it during their general ed classroom, during the independent reading time, because many of our struggling readers don't actually read during independent reading time. So 1 Minute Reader Live is a way to hopefully remedy that situation. A lot of times when a teacher or when a student no longer needs the intervention, having them work in 1 Minute Reader Live for a little while is a great way to bridge them and continue to give them a little bit support as they go out of their intervention time. And of course, it's ideal for students to use over summer break, right? That's what we're talking about today. We've worked really hard all school year to get our kids to be as good of readers as we can get them to be. And now they're going to go off for 12 weeks, and having something for them to do that is motivating, engaging, structured is really ideal. And so this 1 Minute Reader Live is a great resource for that. And as I mentioned, it also can be used in classrooms, intervention rooms. Sometimes people who use Read Naturally Live have a student to teacher ratio that makes it difficult to manage the intervention. And so sometimes they'll break their group into two and have some of the kids working on the independent program so that their student teacher ratio is more manageable, and then they can switch between the two groups. So that's another idea for people. There are 6 levels that are available within 1 Minute Reader Live. And as I mentioned, it starts in first and it goes through that mid-5th grade level. Each level has 8 books. So when I say a book, what I mean is that there are 5 nonfiction stories in these themed books. There's interactive vocabulary, so students can click on blue words to hear their definitions. There's a quiz that most of the questions are graded by the computer, so it gives you some accurate data on their comprehension. There's some gamified experience, so they earn points, and there's some fun activities that you'll get to see in a few moments. So here are the levels that I mentioned that are available. We'll start in that 1st grade level and going through mid-5th grade reading level. So it's widely used with older students. So if your 7th grader is reading at a 5th grade level, they certainly can still utilize this program. Oftentimes I get a question about, well, what are the differences here between Read Naturally Live and 1 Minute Reader Live? Because they are very, very similar. The first thing to mention is that Read Naturally Live is an intervention. So you need to have a teacher with a small group of students. You cannot do Read Naturally Live with 25 kids and 1 teacher. It's not possible. 1 Minute Reader Live is independent, and it still provides structured independent reading, structured reading, but it doesn't need the teacher. So it can be used with general ed students. It can be used with intervention kids when they don't have the support of the teacher that they need. Read Naturally Live goes through 8th grade reading level. We have some work on phonics available in our phonics series. We also have an idiom series, so there's idioms series, so there's more levels available in there. In 1 Minute Reader Live, there's those 6 levels, and the stories are grouped by theme. So you might have cool creatures or amazing athletes. And so then all the stories in the Amazing Athletes book are going to be about students, athletes. The teacher involvement, of course, is the primary difference here. Students are independent in 1 Minute Reader, but they need a teacher for at least 1 or ideally 2 of the steps in Read Naturally Live. We do still have a lot of reports. Obviously, we don't have a phonics reports in 1 Minute Reader Live because there is no phonics that's being done in there, but there still are fluency, comprehension reports in 1 Minute Reader Live, just like in Read Naturally Live. So a lot of people want to know how to get started, and so I'm going to show you how to get started. Okay, I'm going to show you how to make sure your kids have access to Read Live, how to add a student if they're not in the program, we'll show you about placement. It's optional. I'll talk about the couple of different options and how you can manage that, and licensing students. I'll show you where you can find videos to teach kids how to do it. And then I'll walk you through the steps so you can see what it looks like from the student end as well. All right. So I'm going to pop out of my PowerPoint and head over to my staff module. All right. So I'm going to log in as a teacher right now to my Read Live account. So for those of you who have a Read Live account, this looks very familiar to you. If you do not, and you are interested in getting a trial, you are more than welcome to have a trial. For those of you who do not have Read Live, we do always offer a 60-day free trial. So if that is something you want to do as a summer school option for your students, if you're not someone who has an account, feel free to sign up for our trial. So I'm going to go to the home page. And the first thing I told you that I would do is how to give students access to 1 Minute Reader Live. So the first thing you need to do is see, is this student in the account? So I'm going to go under student setup, and I can see that all of my students who are in the account, okay? Let's say my student is Scott Allen. I do not have an Allen last name. He's not in here, okay? I also do not have an extra license to give a new student. But I know that Marcy Baker isn't going to use it in the summer. Her parents don't want her to use it in the summer, or maybe she's no longer going to be in your caseload. So I can take this license away from Marcy Baker, say no. Now another license becomes available, so that when I add a student, a license is available for her to be assigned to her. Okay, so only licensed students within Read Live can use 1 Minute Reader Live. So if they are already in there, I'll show you how you can check if they have it. But if they are not, you need to add them and make sure that a license is assigned to them. Okay. So if I go to add a student, the student I mentioned who we were going to add is Scott Allen. And we will select his grade, the school that he's in. We will give him a user ID and a password. Now I want you to notice, I am lucky because it says a license is available. So if it says, when you get to this point of adding a new student and it says there's no license available, go through your list, see if there's a kid who no longer needs a license that you can take it away. Don't worry, the data from that kid is still in the account. So if he comes back in the fall and you need him to use the program again in the fall, everything he did this school year is still going to be in there. Okay, he just won't be able to use it when he doesn't have a license, but that data will remain. Okay, but I'm lucky here because it's green. It says a license is available. When I click yes, my student automatically gets access to Read Naturally Live and 1 Minute Reader Live. Okay, so I'm going to click Save and Add Another or Save and Close. Okay. Now, if I know my students are in here, if I've been working in here a lot, and I know some of them have 1 Minute Reader access, but not all of them, I'm not sure which, I'm going to start at the home page and I will find the tile that's marked 1 Minute Reader Live. I can also get there in the drop-down menu by heading down to the bottom of the list where 1 Minute Reader Live is listed. And I want you to notice that here again is a list of my students. There's a column over to the right that's called OMR Access. If I click it once, it's going to pull up all the kids who do not have access to 1 Minute Reader Live. And then next, the second section is the ones who do. So if I want to give all of these students access to 1 Minute Reader Live, I can select all of them at once and click Add OMR Access. Okay, so that's a way to give students who are in the account but do not have access to the program. All right. I'm going to log in as a student for a moment. I'm going to show you that experience. But before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about some options with placement. Remember, I told you that placement is optional. The first time a student logs in, they have the option to take themselves through placement. You can imagine a student taking himself through placement may have different degrees of success depending on the kid. So there is a way you can control the levels they have access to, regardless of whether or not they do placement, they do it well, they do it poorly. You can control the levels they have access to. So I'm going to once again go under that 1 Minute Reader Live tile. Okay, and I want you to notice that there's a button up here that says Change Story Options for Selected. Okay, so when I click on that button, I can come in here and I can turn off levels that I know are not the right fit. Okay, so this student, I think it reads at about a second or third grade level, I can turn off the early first, mid first, and the mid fourth and mid fifth. Okay, so this way, regardless of what happens on his independent placement, he will only have access to levels that are at least close. Okay, you don't have to do this, but you can. So that's just an option for you if you are concerned about that. All right, so now I'm going to log in as a student, and I'm first going to log in as the student I just added. I want you to notice that this student has access to Read Naturally Live. I can't change that. If the student clicks on Conduct Placement for Read Naturally Live, it's going to require a teacher login. He doesn't have it. So there's nothing he can do with that. But what this is utilizing for, what we're talking about here, is giving students access to the 1 Minute Reader Live for summer. Okay. So the student will be instructed. You'll say, I just want you to use 1 Minute Reader Live this summer. Okay, so when he lands on this page, he's going to click on the 1 Minute Reader Live button. So the first thing he's asked is, do you want to take a placement? He can say no. He doesn't have to. Okay, if he says yes,
select a level and then click Next to begin testing.
He can select one of these levels, 1, 2, 3. You know, if he's a third grader, he's probably going to select 3. Okay. When he clicks Next, he's going to give himself a timing. It says click Start Timing and begin reading. Okay. So the student is reading and he's going to determine the last word he read when the bell sounds. Okay. So remember, this is not going to be 100% accurate unless either you do it with the student or a parent does it with the student. So you have that option. I'm going to pop back over. Remember, you have that option to turn levels off or on if you want certain students to have access to certain things. Okay. After the student reads the story for a minute, he will select the last word he read. He'll be instructed to. And then the computer is going to say, yeah, that's a good fit, or no, it's not. Why don't you try something harder? Okay. Some kids are going to be really close and others won't be. What I will tell you is that it doesn't matter in the long run usually, because they end up wanting to read a story that's a good fit.
Click on the last word you read when the bell sounded.
They might try a level that's too hard. It's not going to feel good. They might try a level that's too easy. That's not going to feel good either. And so they usually end up in about the right spot.
Click Next to continue.
So now the student clicked the last word he attempted when the bell sounded.
This level might be too challenging. Try reading the story from one level lower.
So when he clicks Next,
select a level and then click Next to begin testing.
He can do another level until he finds the right fit. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is log in as a student and go through the student steps. Okay. This student has access to all 4 programs, as you can see, but what she's going to work through right now is 1 Minute Reader Live.
Please select a story.
This student has already done some stories. You can see that they are passed, but I want you to notice that she can navigate, move herself through the program at will. So she could select one of the stories from a book that she's already started, or she could say, you know what, I'm sick of athletes.
Please select a book.
I want to read about animal heroes, or I've been doing so well lately, I'm going to go up to level 3. This student, the teacher has not turned off any of these levels, so she can navigate at will. You can turn off, excuse me, you can turn off levels if you need to, but you don't have to. So I'll have this student go through one of the stories.
Please select a story. Click Start Timing and begin reading. Click on the words you don't know to hear them read to you. Click Finished if you finish reading before the bell sounds.
So the student clicks the Start Timing button. As the student's reading, they can get any amount of support they need.
Athlete.
As the audio support told them, click on a word you don't know to have it read to you. Every word that's clicked on will be counted as an error, but it's read for the student. That's a really important thing. If they see, hear, say, and click all at the same time, they're going to learn those words that are hard for them. Okay, so the teacher or the training that students can go through, there's little training videos, it will tell them about that. When they are done with the cold read, they're going to be asked to click the last word they attempted, and that cold timing score is going to go into this box. They did not need the teacher support. They did not do a keyword step. They did not do a prediction. They go directly to that cold time. It's okay if it's not 100% accurate. It's not going to be, and that's okay, because it's just a baseline for progress monitoring. We're just giving them a starting point.
Click on the last word you read when the bell sounded.
We want to give them that starting point mostly because we know that as they practice, their scores will increase, and that is rewarding. And that will make them want to keep practicing. It will make them want to keep going. Okay. So now, as you heard the audio, said click the last word.
Click Next to continue. Look at how many words per minute you read.
Notice there is no story goal. There is not an explicit number that the student has to reach in order to be done with this story. Here's their cold score, and we're just going to see how well they can do. All right. So after they see this graph, they go on to the read along step.
Click Start Read Along to read along, or click Next to continue.
Now, I'm allowed to go on to next because I knew we didn't want to hear the whole story during this demo. So I adjusted the story options to be that this student does not have to read along with audio support. Okay. You can adjust how many times they have to read along with audio support, and you can adjust how many times they have to practice before they're allowed to go on. Okay. I want you to notice that many of these words are blue. They're hyperlinked to definitions. Every time they click on a word and hear the definition, they will earn points. Our point system is very heavily weighted in our comprehension questions. So students who want to earn a lot of points have to do well on the quiz in order to earn a lot of points. That's one way that we try to make kids focus on what we know to be the most important thing about reading, comprehension, right? So if kids go real fast and do poorly on the quiz, they're not going to earn a lot of points. If they go slow enough to understand the story, they will do well on the points. So sometimes teachers will have point goals for students that they will, say every week, I want you to have this many points, or by the end of the month, I want you to have this many points as a whole group. So not only individual goals, but goals for your whole class to get a little peer pressure involved. Okay, so tying things to those points is one way to have an easy incentive program. So after the student reads along to the entire passage with the audio support, the default setting is 1 time, but you can change that. Then they go on to the read alone, which is the practice step.
Click Start Timing and begin reading. Click Finished if you finish the story before the bell sounds.
So now the student is practicing. Now, by default, the student has to practice at least 2 times. There is no specific goal he has to reach. He just has to practice twice. Okay. In Read Naturally Live, they have to read and reach a goal during practice in order to go on to the quiz. In this, they only have to do it twice, unless you adjust it. You can make them do it 3 times. You can make them do it 4 times if you wanted, okay? Each time they practice, the number is going to appear in these little bubbles, right? Some of them will practice more than is required because they like seeing those numbers increase, right? A lot of them do that, actually. Some of them just think they have to fill in all the bubbles, but others actually just want to see their score go higher, okay? Each time they practice, they're likely to get a little further, which is very motivating. And then once they've practiced the required number of times, then they can go on to the quick quiz. Of the quick quiz, there's 4 multiple choice questions.
Click on the last word you read when the bell sounded.
4 multiple choice questions and 1 short answer. Now, I have adjusted the story options to be only 1 required read alone, okay? But that by default, it's 2, and I'll show you where you can make the adjustments when we go back to the teacher module. So now the student clicks the last word he read.
Click Start Timing to see if you can improve your score. Or click Next to save this as your hot timing and continue.
So the computer allows the student to choose once they've met the requirement. And whatever the final timing is, that will be the score that is graphed.
Look at how many words per minute you read. Click the best answer for each quiz question. As you answer questions correctly, their letters will fill in the blanks in the joke jumble. Click Show Story to see the story again.
So they can always look back. As they answer the questions, the letters will fill in. So if they get it right, the letter will fill in. Okay, the joke jumble in this case is, why was Cinderella a bad basketball player? Right. These questions are graded by the computer. So you're going to have some accurate comprehension data. If the student gets it wrong, they get a different sound. The letter didn't fill in, and they have to go back and fix it. Okay, it keeps it highlighted, it keeps it a different color so the student knows, okay, it's not that one. I'm going to try this one. Now we have a short answer question.
Type your answer, then click Next.
Now the student gets to grade himself, so some kids are a little more generous with themselves than others, but they can put in as little or as much as they want, and then they can decide whether or not they're done.
Was your answer correct? Check your answer and click Yes or No. Then click Next. Look at your results from this story. Click Next to continue.
So this is how well the student did on this specific story, 550 points, 5,550 points. So that student did well on this story, right? So that's a number, that's a point number per story. So you might think, well, how many stories do I want a kid to pass this summer or this each week or whatever the goal, however you want to set the goal. And then you can take that number and multiply it by how many stories you want them to pass. Okay, that's a way to get kind of a good estimate of what's reasonable for that goal.
Look at your results from this book. Click Next to continue.
See, this student has passed 4 stories in the book, so the total point so far is 21,500. Okay, we can see how they're doing on comprehension, and all these reports, even though they're at home at school in the summer, not at school in the summer, they're at home. You can run these reports when they come back in the fall, during the summer, so you can check in on this from the staff side whenever you want.
Please select a story.
So if the student read the final story in this book, then she'd be allowed to do the crossword puzzle. But if she's sick of reading about athletes,
please select a book.
She can go on to something different. Okay. Now, somebody I think asked about changing the story options. Within the student module, there's this little gears button in the upper right-hand corner, and the teacher can put in her login, and then she can make adjustments to the number of required read-alongs, 0 to 3, number of required practices, 1 to 5, and turning on and off those levels. Okay, so remember,
please select a book.
From the staff module, when you go to the 1 Minute Reader Live section within the staff module, you can select the student's name, and it's that blue button that says Change Story Options for Selected. So that's where I showed you, remember, how to turn on or off levels. That's also where you can adjust the number of read-alongs and the number of practices required. Okay, so those are the places you can do those things. All right, so we just walked through those steps. There's also additional fun things in there that you didn't get to see. For example, well, these ones you did. You get to see the book summary, when you get to see how they're doing on all the stories within one book. After they do finish a book, there is a did you know section. So there's kind of more fun facts about the topic that the book was dedicated to. They get to read through those. And then there's that crossword puzzle I mentioned. So when they click on a clue, it gives them a list of options that they can then select to fill in. Okay. Some of the data that we have on students, just like in Read Naturally Live, include a Students at a Glance, which is going to give you their average cold score after the first 3 compared to their average cold score after the most recent 3. Okay, you also have number of read-alongs as well as final timing and their percentage correct on the quiz. So those data points are available to you. And then you can see them a little closer here. So after the first 3, she averaged 41 words correct. Now she's at 56. Okay. Now, we have a lot of helpful resources on our website, including online courses for 1 Minute Reader Live. We have a webinar that's 1 Minute Reader Live Basics, although you attending this one, you probably don't need to also watch that. We have that Student's Guide to 1 Minute Reader Lives. Remember, I said that we have student training videos that are on our website. So if you go to our website on the training tab, there's a link to student training videos, and you can select the 1 Minute Reader Live one, and they can watch videos to learn how to do it. It's a very helpful link to send to parents for the summer, so the parents know how to do it when their student and when their child is in their home. So that's a helpful resource. That's a helpful resource. We also have welcome letters that can be very helpful. So you can see in the lower right-hand corner here, it's readnaturally.com/read-live-help. That's the website that you can find all of this information at. So that is all that we have for today. We covered briefly the 4 different programs within Read Live, but really we focused on 1 Minute Reader Live, that independent program. So I really thank all of you for attending today.